Top of the day, beautiful people. Happy Monday. Vinette, Angelique, Set Apart, Ema, Lavon, Hannah, Grand Rising, Blessings, Shalom, Shalom, Peace, and everybody else hanging out in the background. Top of the morning to you. Happy Monday. Y'all, it is November the 14th, 2022, day 263 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 4-year consecutive day count. It is day 1282. Remember, that's the count without the Sabbaths, and of course the week sabbatical I had to take, and a couple days with the Wi-Fi messing up, but we actually over that count if we add in the Sabbath days. We're in the we're like 13. No, hold on. No, we're like in the 1400 days, right? Because it's 52 Sabbaths of a year. So 2 years is 100 and something days, right? And so we're in year 4 at another 100 something days. Another 100 something days. And we're in, let's see, 2, yep, like 14 something, right? If we include every single day. But this is just counting the actual days that we're present consistently. All right, y'all. So today we're picking back up in the book of Sathantes, chapter 12 or chapter XII. And we're going to read only this morning, chapter 12 and chapter 13. Then we're going to hop into the field guide to the spirit world so we can finish the chapter, The Black Dog Unleashed. So, Father, we thank you for the individual songs that you create inside of every soul that you send here. All right, let's get started. Chapter 12, page 27. When it was known in Horeb that God was about to return, Haja put all things in readiness for God's reception, and there volunteered 10,000 musicians and 5,000 bearers of banners, 1,000 marshals and officers of the throne, and 100,000 receivers to go part way and meet God and his companions. And Haja granted their prayers, and they started at once, being the most majestic host that had as yet gone forth in the lower heaven. And when they were a little way off, behold, God and his ship of fire approached in heavenly splendor. And the marshals met him and laid hold of the haniv of the ship, whereon all the hosts did in like manner, save the musicians who sang and played. When they drew near and entered Horeb, Haja broke down from his high estate and left the throne, running to meet God as a child would run to its father. And when the multitude saw this, they also broke loose from decorous behavior and gave full vent to their outbursting love for God and his host. And all the people became as a tumult and rivalry of rejoicing. In a little while, God and Haja turned and walked to the throne, ascending thereon, and Haja took his place, and God sat on his right, and order reigned. Haja said, In thy name, O Jehovah, I welcome back thy first son of earth to the kingdom. Thou hast bestowed upon him and thy sons and daughters. Haja said, In thy name, O Jehovah, I welcome back thy first son of earth to the kingdom thou hast bestowed upon him and thy sons and daughters, as much as he hath glorified thee by his labor and by his wisdom and love, so do we honor him in thy name and for thy glory. God said, In thy name, O Jehovah, do I return to these, my loves, that I am returned, I glorify thee, O my Father. That thou hast made them to rejoice is the glory of my life. And now a great light gathered up around about the throne, so that many could not look thereon. And presently the power of Jehovah came upon Haja, and the voice of Jehovah spake through him, saying to God, This again thy throne, O my son, thou shalt finish that which I have put upon thee. Thy people shall learn the manner of my kingdoms, and know that even as I make all, so do I rule over all. Hang up thy traveling guard, my son, dismiss thy traveling host, and resume thy seat on the throne, for I gave it to thee. The voice departed. Haja rose up and stood aside, and the light fell upon God, and he resumed the throne, and was held by the multitude in Jehovah's name. God said to Haja, Because thou hast prospered my kingdom during 1 whole year, Thou shalt be my companion and assistant, with power and wisdom to superintend all matters not direct with my lords. Behold, this day I have set apart as a new day in heaven and earth, because on this day the sun taketh its course for the Hayden north line. And after north line is reference number 8, and 8 at the bottom says from the Hayden north line. It's the same thing, but Hayden is in brackets, to whereas in the top, north is in brackets. I'll read the whole verse 13 again. We're on page 27. Behold, this day I have set apart as a new day in heaven and earth, because on this day the sun taketh its course for the Hayden north line. And from this time forth it shall be called the New Year's Day. So shall it be from this time forth, the day of relief, the day of the relief watch in Horrid. So after Horrid, right here at the end of verse 13, you have reference to letter H. And H, we find at the end of the book of Socrates on page 37, where we find all of the letter references for every book. And this is pretty long. Okay. It says, there are understandable reasons to conclude that the 1882 edition designated summer solstice in the northern hemisphere as the beginning of the astronomical year, while the 1891 edition designated winter solstice in the northern hemisphere as the beginning of the astronomical year. This issue has been the source of endless debates. See Book of Inspiration, chapter 14, XIV, verse 2 and verse 3. Let's look at it real quick. Book of Inspiration. Go to the table of contents. Page 701. Chapter 4. I'm sorry, did I say 4? Did I say 14? I said 14, right? Okay. Chapter 14. XIV. Yep. 14 verses 2 and 3. On page 708. The shortest day on the northern line of the sun shall be the end of the year and shall be called Old Year's Day, said Jehovah. And after shortest day on the northern line, after the, it's reference number 18, and 18 at the bottom here says the shortest day on the northern line of the sun. And it also has reference number 19, and shall be called the Old Year's Day. After day is reference number 19, and 19 at the bottom says, and it shall be called the last day of the old year, saith Jehovah. Verses 2 and 3. And the first day thereafter, when the sun on his southern course started toward the north, and after north is reference number 20, it says at the bottom, the sun starteth on his southern course, starteth toward the north. And the first day thereafter, when the sun on his southern course starteth towards the north, shall be the beginning of the year, and shall be called New Year's Day. And after called is reference number 21, and it shall be called the New Year's Day. And then after day is reference letter A. So we go to the end of this book and find A, which we find on page 711. And A says, it cannot be denied that Old Year's Day and New Year's Day in relation to the winter solstice and summer solstice appears to be completely the opposite between the 1882 and 1891 editions. This apparent contradiction has been the source of endless debates. We, the editors, have customarily celebrated these events in conjunction with the winter solstice. This is based on our observation that ancient as well as modern cultures in the northern hemisphere have historically emphasized winter solstice, as well as the fact that our own communications and council have supported this conclusion. These communications indicated that the conundrum is the result of ambiguous terminology. In the 1882 edition, Northern Line refers to the perspective from the northern hemisphere and started on his southern course, means rising up from the south, admittedly a confusing choice of words, even if this interpretation is correct, since elsewhere in Oahspe, northern line is used as a reference to the Tropic of Cancer. However, by adding shortest day to northern line makes it clear that the 1891 editors interpreted northern line as meaning from the perspective of the northern hemisphere. Y'all get that? I might have to reread that a couple times yourself. Okay, so let's finish. Go back to this reference. Reference letter H on page 37. Jamia, shalom. Shebrew, hey girl, hey, all praises to the creator, animalistic nature, shalom. Anita, greetings. There is CM, shalom, shalom. Was that a hey or you asking a question? Animalistic nature. You probably just saying hey, but just in case I'm wrong, you just saying hey, like hey girl, hey. Okay, page 37. Let me just reread this. I'm gonna just read H all over. It's real long. We didn't even get to no sense. We was only on the second sentence. No, third sentence anyway. All right, H, page 37. There are understandable reasons to conclude that the 1882 edition designated summer solstice in the northern hemisphere as the beginning of the astronomical year, while the 1891 edition designated winter solstice in the northern hemisphere as the beginning of the astronomical year. This issue has been the source of endless debates. See Book of Inspiration, chapter 14, verses 2 and 3, and related footnotes. This verse in the Book of Sathantes, however, is arguably open to interpretation, even though it is admittedly obscure. Here, the phrase north line in the 1882 edition could be interpreted as terminology for the nadir, the shortest day, from the perspective of the northern hemisphere, or on the other hand, as the time when the sun appears at its northernmost latitude in the northern hemisphere, which would be the zenith, the longest day. Hold on, that was the end of the sentence. Hold on, let me just read it over again. Here, the phrase north line in the 1882 edition could be interpreted as terminology for the nadir, the shortest day, from the perspective of the northern hemisphere, or on the other hand, as the time when the sun appears at its northernmost latitude in the northern hemisphere, would be the zenith, the longest day. Communications in council have indicated to the Elohis that winter solstice in the northern hemisphere is the correct interpretation for the astronomical new year. Also, histories of many current as well as ancient cultures support this interpretation. In the final analysis, it will probably do no harm to celebrate both. It may be that Oahspe intended a distinction between the two terms, north line and northern line, thus leading to the confusion. While the 1882 edition of Book of Sathantes stated, the sun taketh its course from the north line, the 1882 editor still footnoted this reference as the shortest day in the northern hemisphere, 1882 edition. In all systems of religion, the revelations attribute the change of watch of the gods and lords to be on that day of the year next after the shortest day in the northern hemisphere, which is the cosmological New Year's Day. But in Book of Fragapati, chapter 19, verse 1, there is a reference to the northern line. It reads, and I don't have to flip there because it's giving it right here. It reads, 1,000 miles north of the northern line of the sun, in the middle betwixt the east and west. In this case, the only logical interpretation would be reference to the Tropic of Cancer as the northern line, which is the line directly below the sun during summer solstice. This is because we know the heavenly kingdom of Yatanti was centrally situated over North America, and 1,000 miles north of the Tropic of Cancer would place the center of Yatanti roughly at the level of middle Kansas, or very near the center of the nation. However, the substitution of shortest day on the northern line for northern line in the Book of Inspiration indicates that the 1891 editors agreed with the interpretation of Northern Line as meaning from the perspective of the Northern Hemisphere in that description of the cosmological New Year as well. Y'all still with me? Let's go on back. Kevin, shalom, shalom. You was just saying hi. Okay, cool. Hi. All right, so go back to page 27, right? Verse 14. Hear my voice, O Haja, and ye the counsel of the throne of heaven. That which I command shall ye proclaim throughout heaven and earth to all who serve me. Because of the increase of the kingdom of Horeb, I will have the place enlarged, and the council shall no longer be called a council, but Moab, for it shall be an assembly over all councils below it. And Moab shall no longer deal with the affairs of individuals, even though they be lords, but it shall have dominion with the cities and kingdoms of heaven, and with judgments and decrees. And back up where it says, but it shall have dominion with the cities. After it is reference number 9, and at the bottom it says she, right? So referring to kingdoms, like we refer to earth as she, right? The earth as she in relation to the heavens, right? We're feminine, that's masculine. Also, with our spirits on a lower level, our spirits are referred to male and female. Our spirits are feminine, so whereas our flesh is masculine, right? There's the different levels. There's always the equal balance and polarities that is everywhere. Okay. Verse 17. But in all matters of less degree, this, my son, Haja, shall have dominion. And thou, O Haja, shalt build thee a house in Horeb near this throne, and it shall be thy house and the place of thy business. The equinoxes make more sense to me than that. Yeah, I'm still, like, some stuff I understand. I had to watch a whole lot of YouTube videos with pictures going around with the actual observance of things. I still don't have it quite down yet, which is probably why some of the things why me tracking the sun is still out of place. Because that's one thing, like, I listened to a few different people explain it, and it's like, yeah, I still don't get it. Right? I got a little bit more studying to do in that as well. Then I'll be able to just give y'all quick, okay, so this is essentially what it's saying. So you know how I ain't able to do that yet with the equinoxes, right? Somebody else, I think Selah is really good with that. Okay. Page 27, chapter 13, or chapter XIII. So God enlarged the place of Horeb and built 1,000 more pillars of fire, enlarging the circle and otherwise making it a place of splendor. And God called together the recorders from the libraries of heaven and caused them to select 100,000 new members for the house of Moab, parliament, choosing them from the highest on the list. In this matter, God said, seek not the most learned, nor the most prayerful for members, but choose ye such as rank highest, assimilating to Jehovah and to their fellows, for such are the first to become gods and goddesses, right? I'm going to read that again. But we ain't got to be perfect. Our hearts really have to be in the right place, and we really, truly have to be searching for truth. And as we learn truth, we have to be open enough, put pride aside, be able to recognize, I was doing that wrong. Let me adjust. It's them who are first in line to become gods and goddesses because we make corrections. And our Creator is all about perpetual growth. Because we are enacting that, we're embodying that correction. Hey, y'all, I made a mistake. Okay, so this is what I learned. This is the information we were missing. I know we was doing it like this, but with this information, we can't continue on in the same way where we were going, because at that point, we're choosing to ignore more information. Like you can't do a full, it's just like doing a science project or sitting in the science lab, right? You doing it based on, say the teacher tell you to read the first 10 chapters, right? You got a week to read the first 10 chapters, right? But you taking cliff notes, you skipping through things, and you get a couple of the points or whatever on how to do something, or you skim through, take all the main points. Okay, you skim all the steps, right? But you skim all the steps. Okay, boom, I got all the steps down. I can do this project, right? You get in there and things start going wrong, right? You done took a shortcut. You didn't take the time to go through and find out how to double check yourself and make sure each step works out appropriately before you move on to the next, right? So now you got a big mess. Teacher got to come running in with the fire extinguisher. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, first of all, I can see, but tell me where you think you went wrong. I don't know, right? Because you didn't do proper studying, right? You didn't take the time to go through and check your own work, just like you can go through and check your own work in math, double check things and make sure the equation is working out before you keep moving on. And if something is not working out, you're not getting the right answer, that means there's a problem in a previous step and you need to backtrack and find out exactly where you got off. It's no different from us in spiritual growth. Absolutely no different. We cannot, if something is not working right and you find yourself hitting a wall, that means you missed a step somewhere. You're not applying something that you should be applying, right? So those ones, okay, we have new information. We absolutely have to consider it, right? We got to put it on the table with all the other information we got, right? And now, once we get the new information, some things have to be rearranged in the equation based on the new information we have, right? I'm just saying. Verse 2, page 27. Seek not the most learned, nor the most prayerful for members. Matter of fact, let me just go back to verse 1. Chapter 13. So God enlarged the place of Horeb and built 1,000 more pillars of fire, enlarging the circle and otherwise making it a place of splendor. And God called together the recorders from the libraries of heaven and caused them to select 100,000 new members for the house of Moab, Parliament, choosing them from the highest on the list. In this matter, God said, seek not the most learned, nor the most prayerful for members, but choose ye such as rank highest in assimilating to Jehovah and to their fellows, for such are the first to become gods and goddesses. Jehovah said, a strong man may do more work than a weak one, and yet the latter may stand fairer in my sight, meaning the weakest one. He ranks a whole lot higher than you because you thought with your brute strength, and everybody can see your brute strength and how good you look, that you was going to beat the system. He stands in a higher light than, because he doesn't have that strength, it causes him to use this, right? You thinking you can beat everything with this, right? Come on, let me at him, right? And he was like, well, shoot, I ain't got all that strength. Okay, so let me see. How can I outsmart or get to this? Let me observe first before I go in here rushing in, because I ain't got the muscle. He going to be able to knock him down, but I need to figure out another way, right? Listen. Seek not the most learned, nor the most prayerful for members, but choose ye such as rank highest in assimilating to Jehovah and to their fellows, for such are the first to become gods and goddesses. Hey, son.
Is he back?
Is he back? Is you referring to yourself? Is he back? Or are you talking about somebody? Nene, shalom, sis. Oh, you read through the comments.
I'm here to create problems. What's good?
You better get out of here. Because look, we trying to get to this book today. Don't come in here. I mean, if you got legit questions before you got to roll out of here, then do ask. But don't be throwing me off track. Okay. Jehovah saith, a strong man may do more good works than a weak one, and yet the latter may stand fairer in my sight. I open the way to the weak and the strong, to the learned and the unlearned. God said, in all these matters, whatever man or woman have put away selfish desires for self's sake, serving the Father by laboring for others, is on the road to wisdom. And if the records show a sufficient time for growth in such man or woman, whereby these virtues become organic, meaning they become a part of you, and just like you breathe, you automatically implement these things that you learn as a part of your life. Like, this is you now. You're not trying to figure it out. This is you. You've assimilated. It's a part of your being, right? God said, in all these matters, whatever man or woman have put away selfish desires for self's sake, serving the Father by laboring for others, is on the road to wisdom. And if the records show a sufficient time for growth in such man or woman, whereby these virtues become organic, then choose ye that person, for such shall be Moab. So the laborers gathered from the heavens around about Agni, and built Moab within, suitable for the members to be seated according to their rank. And when it was finished, on the same day, the recorders brought the new members, and they went into the temple to their respective places. And when seated, God spake from the throne, saying, To thee, O Jehovah, have I built the house of Moab in Horeb, and by thy wisdom have I chosen the members thereof. To thee, O Father, I dedicate this house, and it shall be thy house. Give us of thy light, O Jehovah, that we may not err. A light descended from the heavens above and fell upon the members of Moab as a symbol of approval by the archangels, and presently the new members rose up, every one of their own accord, but the old members remained seated. God said, Above your heads I make the sign of Jehovah's name, in a circle of fire, and the cross, and the leaf of life, for by it are ye sworn to the Father's labor. Hear me, then, O my beloved. Ye are henceforth denied individual ministration with individuals, but ye are now become a unit with many, and with these must your labor and your love and your wisdom be in concert of action. You hear what that said? Yes.
Why in the world do they talk like that? Why can't they just have it in translated form or format where it's like, okay?
Because we have refined our language, if you want to call it refined a little bit more. We don't speak in old English terms, but it still does. But if you read it enough, you would get it. Listen, let me go back and read this. Verse 8. Hear me then, O my beloved. Ye are henceforth denied individual ministration with individuals, but ye are now become a unit with many. And with these must your labor and your love and your wisdom be in concert of action. Which is saying, because you know how a really good example of that is today's prophets in the Christian church, right? How they're handing out individual prophecies. We've only seen that. You get that in the Old Testament from the true prophets of the Creator, like Jeremiah and Isaiah and some of the other ones. And when they did individual prophecies, it wasn't necessarily just for the individual. And it was always the king, right? It was always the king. Because the king was in charge of the nation, so the prophecy that went to the king was not just for him, but it was so he can guide and lead the nation, right? There shouldn't, although you can, that's like a lower level of light that's going to get you off. And that's how we have charlatans running amok here on the earth today. And people is paying for prophecies. You're no different than a soothsayer. No different from Miss Barbara over here reading her crystal ball on the corner down here, right? You're no different. The Father said that's not... Now, when you come in here, you come up higher. We don't do that, right? That's down there. I don't want you caught up in that, right? We're ministering to bodies of people, right? Not just giving. Do you have a word for the Lord for me? No. Goodbye. Right? Seriously. Because that's how people, they start, that's the beginning of people beginning to put you up on a pedestal by doing little stuff like that. And it's really gone, it is out of control. It's been out of control for many years, right?
Yeah, I want to know what's out of control.
And then they milk you with all your money, right? And see, these people that's giving these prophecies, how much donation did you give? Well, I ain't giving it to you, get a donation of this to the church. I'm like...
No, you know
see, that violates some rules of the Creator, right? But people don't think about that, right? Because they ain't thinking about the Creator. They just thinking about what? Self. Verse 8. Hear me then, O my beloved. Ye are henceforth denied individual ministration with individuals, but ye are now become as a unit with many. And with these must your labor and your love and your wisdom be in concert of action. Henceforth must ye no longer say, what can I do for this man, or this woman, or that woman, or this child, or that child? For this is individual labor, and on the earth such ministration belongeth to the Ashars, and in atmosphere such ministration belongeth to the Asaphs. But ye shall minister to organic communities who are composed of individuals. For there are communities for factories, and others for education, and others for treatment of the sick, and such communities exist both on earth and in heaven. Ye shall divide yourselves into groups for this purpose, and every group shall have its special business in charge, and each group shall stand in Moab as one member of Jehovah's judgment seat. According to your talents shall ye divide and group together, choosing such department wherein each one hath the greatest wisdom and strength. Withdraw then, and thus complete your groups according to the rates my proper officers will assign, and then again into Moab, and in Jehovah's name take the seats allotted to you all. And this is interesting because now that I'm in this, we're pausing right here, y'all, in Oahspe. Now that I'm in this graduate program, this is how this is crazy how this is lining up. And I'm sure all colleges may do this, and they've probably been doing it for a while, but it's just now making sense to me. Even now, while turning in work, like we have individual work that we do. This program, I have individual work that I do, but the individual work that I'm required to do is not turned in individually, so to speak. My individual work is my portion of the project that I have to do with my group. So when the people in my group turn in our work, we're turning in the group's work. And within this group, even if it's a paper, even within this group's paper, everybody has added their portion that has been allotted to them, right? It's really interesting. I'm like, this is, okay, I've seen this, I've read this through Oahspe, right? But that's how it is. And they use Microsoft Teams, right? So, as I just find it really, really interesting. Like, as I grow, things that happen in my life is like lining up with the new things that I'm learning at higher lights. I'm like, yo, and I get new information that I can use, and of course new stories that develop along the way that I can share.
People look at me like I'm a rocket scientist when I tell them about ECPI and how fast it is. They look at me like,
well, some people not used to like that fast pace, but I can't have it any other way.
Yeah,
I mean, some things that have to go slow, but I like their program because each term is like only 5 weeks. But I got used to that being in the military, especially with their education, it's like moving you along. But it requires a whole lot more of you, and it requires diligence and being focused. You can't let a week pass. Letting a week pass or missing one day is equivalent to missing 2 weeks from regular college.
Well, missing one day is considered missing a whole week.
No, 1 day is considered missing 2 weeks.
Yeah, 1 day is considered missing 2 weeks. But missing a whole week is...
Yeah.
You're actually looking at being...
Yeah, like you it's impossible for you to pass that course if you miss 2 weeks worth of work through here. All right, Selah Shalom, Key, Oahspe blessings, family. All right, y'all, so go over to listen, I ain't got time today, Jeremiah. Like, does it have anything to do? I hate to cut you off. I know this probably sound rude. Like, oh my gosh, let the man speak. Okay, does it have to do with this or what we read?
No, there's a lot of background.
Okay, so, you go ahead. Jacksonville Shaft, Shalom, Mom, Shalom. Look, I'm thinking he about to try and answer a question. He just trying to tell me. Look. Are you done?
No.
Mom, can I
Are
end
you
it?
done?
Mom, can I end it?
Yes. What you need to be doing is going and get dressed, because shortly after this, we all need to leave out of here.
To wait?
We gotta go. I told y'all we gotta go to Williamsburg this morning. Okay.
We have to do it while Williamsburg.
Just go. All right, y'all. I thought he was trying to ask me a question. He was just trying to be courteous and be like, Mom, I'm about to blend my thing. So, but I'm sorry. You know, see, sometimes I don't be, you know. Anyway, page 72. The Black Dog Unleashed, which is in chapter 3 of the Field Guide to the Spirit World. Okay, and we're gonna start right under. Listen, y'all need to go get yourselves together. Right, go. I'll call you and see. I'll call you both when I'm done.
Sorry, y'all sound a mess. Please go get yourselves ready.
Okay. Right after the quote from Sergeant Pete Uloff is where we're going to begin, where it starts with the estimates are conservative. What are you doing?
You pull it out.
What? Why did you need me to do that?
My finger adjusted, so I couldn't really.
Mom, if we come back.
I don't know. We'll talk about this in a minute. Y'all go. Get yourselves together. Let's go. Okay. No.
What do you say?
I don't know. He said something smart.
I don't like this. What do you, bro?
I don't know. The estimates, quote, the estimates are conservative, end quote, reported the Associated Press on June 30th, 2004, referring to a sharp rise in PTSD and military suicides. Quote, why do the numbers keep going up? We cannot tell you, end quote, said an Army spokesman disingenuously at the height of the war in Iraq. Jelinek and Hefling, 2009. And after, uh-oh. Y'all can hear me on YouTube? This thing popped up. Can y'all hear me? Am I still here? Okay. That was weird. Okay. All right. No, Tootie. Okay. We cannot tell you, said an Army spokesman disingenuously at the height of the war in Iraq. And after disingenuously, there's this asterisk. And down at the bottom it says, the obvious was not mentioned. Increased exposure of troops to combat, thanks largely to President Bush's troops buildup, more deaths than in previous years. Violence increased in Afghanistan with the Taliban insurgents. More troops serving a second, third, or fourth tour of duty. Tour lengths extended from 12 to 15 months. Okay, that makes sense now. Let's go back up. Quote, the estimates are conservative, end quote, reported the Associated Press on June 30th, 2004, referring to a sharp rise in PTSD and military suicides. Quote, why do the numbers keep going up? We cannot tell you, end quote, said an Army spokesperson disingenuously at the height of the war in Iraq. Jelinek and Hefling, 2009. It was a turning point. Prior to 2008, defense officials had not disclosed the number of PTSD cases from Iraq and Afghanistan, but then the announcement came. Records showed about 40,000 troops diagnosed with the illness known as PTSD. Okay, but then the announcement came. Records showed about 40,000 troops diagnosed with the illness known as PTSD. And after PTSD, there's the little cross. And down at the bottom, it says, as of April 2015, 500,000 troops who served in Afghanistan and Iraq were diagnosed with PTSD. Go back up. If the official military count was originally 1 out of 6, that figure now doubled once the spotlight was thrown on it. Dolby, 2008, page 12. By 2012, the sorry facts emerged. Even more than combat casualties, self-harm is now the leading cause of death for members of the Army, which has seen its suicide rate double since 2004. Ducapel, 2012, page 42. Plus, active duty suicides, numbering about 260 in 2013, were scant compared to the number of veterans who took their lives after coming back home.
Peace out. Today I want to bombard y'all with some information that's going to have y'all thinking like, what in the world? Because I sure had some stuff ready for y'all.
Every month, nearly 1,000 of them, discharged veterans, attempt to take their own lives. That's more than 3 attempts every 90 minutes. Ducapel, 2012, page 42. Thus, more vets were dying at home than soldiers in combat missions abroad. Back in 2008, the VA, or VA meaning Veterans Affairs, back in 2008, the VA put the suicide rate of vets at 5,000 per year. Sheesh. Randall, 2008, page 4. When Corporal Jenkins, suicide hero of Najaf, went to division psychology for help with his depression, they diagnosed him with adjustment disorder rather than PTSD. They gave him Ambien to help him sleep and Ativan, an anti-anxiety drug. Then they declared him fit for duty, but the Ambien didn't help, neither did the Ativan. And now the little hide-and-seek game with PTSD was on. Could the mounting problem be contained by changing the name, by moving cases over to a more innocuous diagnostic label like adjustment disorder? Have y'all seen that movie Dog? This is that's a really good movie. The guy, I forget his name. I forget his name. But y'all got to see that. That's a good movie, and it shows it has a really good story in there about PTSD and how military veterans they began to deal with it, and then they start showing you how a lot of them began to recover when they got dogs, and yeah, I don't want to give it away. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's really, really good. I'll show the clip for that. But I just thought about that. We went to the movies to see it when it was still in theaters, but it's now. You can get it on Amazon Prime. I'm not sure about Netflix, but that's a really good one. Okay, one page 73. And now the little hide-and-seek game with PTSD was on. Could the mounting problem be contained by changing the name, by moving cases over to a more innocuous diagnostic label like adjustment disorder? One psychologist advised her staff, quote, "Given that we are having more and more compensation-seeking veterans, I'd like to suggest that you refrain from giving a diagnosis of PTSD straight out. Instead, she suggests that a diagnosis of adjustment disorder be made, since she and her colleagues, quote, really don't have time to do the extensive testing that should be done to determine PTSD," end quote. Randall, 2008, page 4. The ploy became endemic. One PTSD Marine, for example, had to wait months for an appointment with a regimental psychologist, and when he finally got one, quote, the doctor tried to talk him out of his symptoms, end quote. Dobie, 2008, page 15. But this approach was short-lived, and so the next gambit was to suppose a pre-existing personality disorder. This was how SPC J. Town was sent packing. Town, who served for 7 years, ended up suicidal with PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and loss of hearing after a rocket blew up above his head. Quote, "I was kind of flying, and then there was a fireball behind me," end quote, he recounted. He bled from his ears and fell unconscious. Randall, 2008, page 5. with the label of, quote, pre-existing personality disorder, end quote. The Army was able to discharge him with no benefits, even though Town did not have any history of mental problems. Indeed, it was around this time that investigative reporters discovered that, quote, the majority of soldiers who committed suicide did not have known histories of mental disorders, end quote. Jelinek and Hefling, 2009, page A3. By 2009, with the problem refusing to go away and tactical dodges proving ineffective, assorted treatment strategies for PTSD hove into view. Embarrassingly banal were their clinical programs offering 2-bit Psychobabble, emphasizing education, compassion, and forgiveness. That's got to be our title, 2-bit Psychobabble. That's definitely going to be in our title today. Okay. Embarrassingly banal were their clinical programs offering 2-bit Psychobabble, emphasizing education, compassion, and forgiveness. Dukoppel, 2012, page 43. Then some geniuses decided to appeal the victim's macho pride, so they went in a, quote, former corporate coach, end quote, whose version of stress management would emphasize, quote, warrior resilience, end quote, and, quote, sucking it up, end quote. Gomez, 2009, page 1. By 2014, the experts were saying that fear was the key to unlock the closed door of PTSD. Then in 2015, they changed that to guilt. As pathetic as these pseudo-solutions were, the hardcore hypocrisy came from the science stronghold itself. Scientists, according to the most recent pseudo-breakthrough, may, quote, soon be able to erase out of our most traumatic memories, end quote, using a mice-tested inhibitor drug called HDAC, which helps, quote, brain cells to form new connections, end quote. Conniff, 2014, page 14. And aren't we the poor saps who are so easily seduced by any scientific announcement with the word brain in it? The latest and greatest, April 2015, hit us with, quote, the nation's first ever brain bank for post-traumatic stress disorder, end quote. The donated brains in this macabre development will hopefully yield, quote, important biological insights that might improve care for the hundreds of thousands of people who suffer from it, PTSD, end quote. But even if they do find the hope for structural changes associated with PTSD, so what? Bully for science. The carrot that it, quote, could reshape treatment for military veterans, end quote, I'll wager is an empty promise. Thompson, 2015, page 41 through 43. I'll stand with the reader who commented, quote, I am no scientist, but they don't need a brain bank to find one cause of PTSD, end quote. Thus wrote Robert Brudno of Washington, whose brother had seen a POW, or prisoner of war, for over 7 years in North Vietnam. In a letter to the editor of Time on April 13, 2015, Brudno's brother took his own life after only 4 months of freedom, having, quote, endured the horrors of war, only to return to a country that blamed the war on the warriors. I leave the physiology of PTSD to the scientists, but they won't find the marks in the brain. Those wounds were in the heart, end quote. Page 6. It was not Corporal Jenkins' brain, but his, quote, untreated PTSD that led to his suicide. When he most needed help from the military failed him, denied benefits. Jenkins was left with only a bitter sense of betrayal, end quote. It was in that emotion, sense of betrayal that we began to see the outlines of a passive-aggressive pattern. Jenkins' downward drift on the aggressive side of the equation involved gambling, bad checks, the brig. On the passive side was his, quote, unswerving devotion to duty, end quote. He get nice.
Fun fact, a lady that was high up, of course now people just like, you know what, it ain't even worth it to hide these secrets. So a lady high up said their last card they're gonna pull, they say these sightings of extraterrestrials, UFOs, all of that, that's their last card to play. Guess what they're doing right now?
Okay. I'll respond to that later. I want to finish this today. We're not talking about extraterrestrials at the moment.
I mean, might as well. The stuff you gonna pull out from them, they gonna.
You done with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, brief them.
Okay.
So they're ready before you bring it out.
Jenkins' downward drift on the aggressive side of the equation involved gambling, bad checks, the brig. On the passive side was his, quote, unswerving devotion to duty, end quote. Dobie, 2008, pages 14 through 16. It is the same formula that we see in countless cases of mental breakdown. Trauma plus denial equals disaster. I'm going to put that in the title too. The Psychobabble and this equation. That's going to be in the title. Decades ago, 1971, John Kerry spoke of, quote, the feelings these men carry with them after coming back from Vietnam. This country doesn't know it yet, but it's created a monster in the form of millions of men who have been taught to deal in violence and who are given the chance to die for the biggest nothing in history, end quote. And after that quote, there's an asterisk, and down at the bottom of the page it says, a transcript of this speech can be found at John Kerry Statements Before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on the American Rhetoric website, updated April 19, 2017. Okay, go back up. The, quote, passive dependent, end quote, or passive aggressive type is marked by an identity void, a personality vacuum, self having been robbed, and in most cases under the strict hectoring or domineering ruling of an enforcer type parent. Many killers are the passive aggressive type, most raised by an overbearing, rejecting parent with a zealous agenda. Quote, brainwashing in whatever form is the ultimate passive-oriented experience, end quote. Alan Wiseman, We Immortals. Hypocrisy lies at the psyche's bedrock. In this comparison, the parent is the military and the child is the trusting recruit who loses himself in the illogical crime of war. In Iraq, thousands of soldiers who were disillusioned by the change of mission from liberation to occupation, the soldier's soul, now awakening from the American dream, informs him it has been a nightmare. Shock and trauma can unhinge the mind. That's really important for us to realize and to understand, especially when you're dealing with people. If you consider some of the traumas that may have been inflicted upon them when they were younger and even older, it literally it disconnects something, which causes the native spirit to go into abeyance, to be pushed to the side, and opens that door to whatever spirits are surrounding around them. Shock and trauma can unhinge the mind. Flight of the soul is the next best thing to actual flight from the horrid scene. PTSD clinicians often hear lines like, quote, Nothing can prepare you for what it's really like. Some say it feels like I've lost my soul, end quote. It is the familiar tale of disintegrating vets. The Copel, 2012, page 44. This is the pathology that the great psychoanalyst Nandor Fodor had in mind when he wrote, quote, I began to wonder whether indeed a devastating shock might not produce a kind of psychic lobotomy, tearing loose part of the mental system and leaving it floating free like a disembodied entity, end quote. Quoted in Rogo, 1979, page 241. Page 76. Though combat neurosis or PTSD has as many varieties as it has victims, one common denominator of the war experience is shock. In Nam, it was mortar fire, foxholes, and the dead tunnels, hand-to-hand combat, shrapnel, malaria, jungle rot, fear of the night, or seeing, quote, all those bodies stacked alongside of the road, end quote. Blinder, 1985, page 30. This was Dan White's testimony. White, your dad's. White, who murdered San Francisco's mayor in 1978, had been a paratrooper in Vietnam. Nothing unseats the psyche as efficiently as trauma and witness to violence. In Iraq, quote, 2 and 3 soldiers handled or uncovered dead bodies. The same ratio saw wounded and sick women and children they couldn't help. Nearly 80% had lost a friend or had a friend wounded, end quote. DeCopel, 2012, page 43. Vets also tell us about the constant threat of surprise attack, while surveys confirm that 95% of Marines have been shot at. Army SPC J.P. Dawyer, a medic, became a hero when he was photographed running through a battle zone carrying a small boy named Ali. And we also, it's not just military people who deal with symptoms of PTSD. People in some of the neighborhoods in like Chicago and some of these cities and towns that are overrun with violence, especially gun violence, and people who are part of that, maybe not the ones actually shooting, but those who are the victims or the people living there that don't have any means to get out of there, they can also suffer from this, right? Having nightmares, flashbacks, all of these things happen, right? Army SPC J.P. Dawyer, a medic, became a hero when he was photographed running through a battle zone carrying a small boy named Ali. The picture ran in newspapers across America, hailed as a portrait of the heart behind the U.S. military machine. But Doc Dawyer was haunted by memories of his experiences in combat during the first 3 weeks that his unit was in Iraq. 17 of those days included gun battles. The day before the famous picture was taken, his Humvee was hit by a rocket. Back home, he struggled with PTSD, depression, check. Lawlessness, check. Drugs, check. Paranoia, check. Divorce, check. Doc Dawyer died alone at age 31 of a drug mishap tantamount to suicide. Authorities stick to the disingenuous sound bites. Quote, the military isn't really sure what's causing these suicides, end quote. Gomez, 2009, page 1. Besides suicide by drugs, there is always suicide by cop. And after suicide by drugs, there's an asterisk. And it says, Dawyer died after huffing, inhaling the fumes of an aerosol can, and taking some pills. Besides suicide by drugs, there is always suicide by cop. Deeply paranoid and suicidal since back in New Jersey, former Are those mine? Yes. Then they're upstairs in our room. I don't know. No, you can't use mine. We need to be leaving shortly. Go, tell your dad, check his, he had on that jacket yesterday. Is that, yeah, say Dodge? Yeah, that's it. Somebody put him on there. Okay, yeah, you good. Drive safe, son. Love you. Okay. Quote, deeply paranoid and suicidal, end quote, since back in New Jersey, former Army SPC German Sanabria was a different, harder man when he returned from his second tour of duty in Iraq. When the 26-year-old vet was caught in the act of stabbing his stepfather, police shot Sanabria to death February 2008. Yes, babe.
You got peanut butter?
No, we need to get some more peanut butter. We're going to get something. All right. Did you brush your teeth? Go do that, sis. Go do that. Well, I'll be up there. I'm going to help you get yourself straight. Watch out. We're on page 77. One attorney representing an Iraqi combat vet charged with manslaughter termed it a hole in their souls. In the science of psyche, that hole is equivalent of void self. And once the soul has absconded from the frightful trauma, who carries on and how? What exactly is the thing that takes over? I am convinced there is only one path that leads to an answer. ASCs or no, Bella, put it back. ACS is altered states of consciousness. I am convinced there is only one path that leads to an answer. ASCs, especially those that manifest as memory loss, detachment, paranoia, panic attacks, seizures, nightmares, inexplicable crimes, and suicide. And also you can see this type of behavior in people who have been physically abused by, I guess it falls in, but like domestic abuse, like with women being beat by their husbands or somebody else. It could be their father. You see these type of things as well happening to them, not just people in the military, those who live in crime-ridden cities and stuff, right? You can see these things happening in different areas of life. I am convinced there is only one path that leads to an answer. ASCs, especially those that manifest as memory loss, detachment, paranoia, panic attacks, seizures, nightmares, inexplicable crimes, and suicide. There is one more verse to the rhyming, quote, hole in the soul. The hole in the soul means a loss of control. This is PTSD. It is an ASC or altered state of consciousness. One is no longer in control. Something can, quote, take over, end quote. In the upcoming chapter, we will dive right into the psyche side of crime, but we are not quite finished with the scars of war or with Vietnam stress syndrome, for we have only looked at the damage wrought on the mortal side of life. What about the actual casualties? More than 50,000 Americans died in Vietnam, mostly young guys who had barely begun adult life. They, too, left the war with PTSD, but on the other side. Slain in war, their spirits are in chaos, unable to move on, tormented and hard bound to the earth in fury and frenzy. Quote, spirits in chaos, millions of them, fasten themselves onto the battlefields, still battling, or fastening themselves onto mortals, obsessing them to madness and death, end quote. Oahspe, Book of Sathantes, chapter 3, verse 36. Known as chaotics or deranged angels, these obsessing spirits, we also know them as demons as well, right, from the Christianity sector. Known as chaotics or deranged angels, these obsessing spirits fill the lower heavens and remain helplessly anchored to the living, delighting in darkness, quarrels, and crime. Among them are the entities behind spirit possession, though often unwittingly, not even knowing where they are. Quote, there are millions of souls in heaven slain in war, not knowing that they themselves are dead. They have not wisdom or strength to go more than one length away from the mortal they inhabit. End quote. Oahspe, Book of God's Word, chapter 7, verse 11, and Book of Leka, chapter 21, verse 12. And their mortal hosts may be, quote, driven to nameless deeds of horrors, end quote. Oahspe, Book of Wars, chapter 54, verse 18. And that explains, and for those who are just coming in, that's what we're reading through for the second time now. All these small books that are bound together in Oahspe, right? This gives us a lot of spiritual insight. If all you've been reading up to this point is the Bible, the 66 books, you would find so much more enlightenment if you would pair that with this, with Oahspe. And also I'm going to add in the Essenes Gospel of Peace, right? You would get a better spiritual education. It's going to bring a lot of things to light that you're learning about or have been learning about in scripture. And it helps you grow in leaps and bounds and being able to decipher truth from error, right? And it gives you more spiritual growth, more substance. And you will actually begin to see, especially if you've been in a rut and you found yourself stuck with spirituality, you will realize that adding these two missing pieces, not that they're the only missing pieces, because they're not by any means. They're just a portion of some of the pieces that we've been ignorant of for so long. This is going to help bring a lot more clarity to things and a lot of things to light, and it's going to help you break through that stuck place. Okay. And let me go back. Let me read this. And this is the end of the chapter, y'all. I'm going to go back to the beginning of this paragraph on page 77 at the bottom. Known as chaotics or deranged angels, these obsessing spirits fill the lower heavens and remain helplessly anchored to the living, delighting in darkness, quarrels, and crime. Among them are the entities behind spirit possession, though often unwittingly, not even knowing where they are. Quote, there are millions of souls in heaven slain in war, not knowing that they themselves are dead. They have not the wisdom or the strength to go more than one length away from the mortal they inhabit. End quote. Oahspe, Book of God's Word, chapter 7, verse 11, and Book of Leka, chapter 21, verse 12. And both of those books are found in Oahspe, if you didn't know. And their mortal hosts may be, quote, driven to nameless deeds of horrors. Oahspe, Book of Wars, chapter 54, verse 18. It is time then to plunge into the dark side. However grisly and gruesome it is in the depths of sociopathy, the world of the predator, that we may uncover the most telling features of psyche and the genesis of soul murder. And that is the end of the Black Dog Unleashed chapter. And chapter 4, which will begin tomorrow, is entitled Soul Murder, right? And it's going to give you a lot of different examples of people. Yeah, because we have to go ahead and pause this. It's giving you a lot of killers, their crimes, their experience, of course, the sources where you can find all of this stuff. And you can Google a lot of these and get some of this as well. But you will get articles and books and some medical journals and different things like that where you can verify some of this stuff. But yeah, this is a really, really good chapter. All right, y'all. So with that being said, let's go ahead and end it today. I'm glad we got to finish it. We've been in this chapter for like 3 or 4 days. All right, y'all. So it is Monday. Happy Monday, beautiful people. November the 14th, 2022, day 263 of year 4, reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets, and of the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1282. We read in Oahspe, Book of Sathantes. We started on page 27, and we ended on page 28. We only read 2 chapters, 12 and 13. And then we hopped over to the field guide to the Spirit were to finish up the Black Dog Unleashed on page 72 to page 78. I'm going to post that link for the preview of the movie Dog that came out, I think it came out last year. Yeah, it came out last year, but it's really good. And it gives you some details and it gives you like some little insight, some of this stuff. Also a good example, well, we see a lot of it, but one, a specific example, I didn't even mention it, but I thought about it when I was reading it. We was talking about the military gentleman dying by, was it suicide by, hold on. We was talking about, suicide by drugs, and then there's also suicide by cop. When I read that, I thought about the movie Life, you know, with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy. So you remember when, what's the guy? He was Django Lang's boyfriend. Anyway, that dude, I forget his name, but they was about to release him. But while he was there locked up, he had taken on another whole lifestyle. And so although he was about to be freed, he wasn't ready to deal with the pressures of the outside world by coming out being like a changed man. And he said his mom wouldn't even know who he was, and he didn't want to live like that. So what he did, he decided, because you could even see there, although he wasn't lashing out, he was exhibiting some of those symptoms of like fear and being just thinking ahead and being denied. You know how people just, we don't accept that type of lifestyle. And not that they should, everybody has their own whatever. But I only brought this up so you can see an example of it. There's many other, but that was the first one I thought about. So instead of actually being released and having to go through that, he was thinking about ahead the things that he would probably experience, and he didn't want to do it. And he chose to die suicide by cop, you know, and he took off running and he ran across the gun line, right? And everybody was trying to stop him. And, you know, you could tell it's just that there's no other way for me. Like, if I'm here and I can't make them keep me in here, you know, I'm going to end it all, because I can't go out there because they're not going to accept who I am. So I have to end it, right? You ain't getting my cornbread. Right? So that's an example. Yeah, so Kevin, that's funny, reminded me of that. All right, y'all, so we're about to go ahead and get out of here, right? I love y'all. I see y'all back here tomorrow morning. I'm gonna post that little clip, so I'm gonna post a little cornbread clip for Kevin. You ain't getting my cornbread. All right, y'all, I'm gonna post this, and I see y'all back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace. I should have called though. You know what? Bella and Isaiah, they gonna fight over who gonna end what. So we'll see.
Oh my goodness, the laptop.
Yes, since you asked, you can end the laptop. Isaiah, come on, you can end the phone. Where he at? Is he in the shower? All right, come on. I already said peace. Oh, Father, we thank you for clarity. Yeah, that's how clarity. By us going through this, y'all, just in case you didn't know, it better prepares us. It teaches us we grow spiritually, but we're also able to be a literal light now and help others. It's like we're getting real substance, real teaching.
Off of the iPad.
Stop. We're moving out of like kindergarten, moving up to where we can actually be of help, and we can join in the ranks of our brethren and sisters, helping raise up our younger brothers and sisters, and even some of the older ones that are passing through. All right, y'all. I love y'all. See you tomorrow. Peace.